what if God is moving out of the pulpit? I'm not saying that we shouldn't have a pulpit at all and, on the four walls of a church building, but the church isn't a building. The church isn't a business. The church isn't an organization. The church is a community of believers living out their faith walk together. That's the New Testament church.
What if success isn't measured by what you build, but by the impact you make? Today's guest, Mike Thakur, calls himself an impact architect. Born and raised in England, he's led nine-figure tech sales, served in CEO-level roles with the Secret Service for billionaires, and founded Work Lodge, Houston's oldest co-working brand. He went viral for restoring a burned-down mansion in Nashville and now leads the Hope Economy, a nonprofit helping entrepreneurs do business God's way. Mike brings bold energy, kingdom vision, and a contagious passion for purpose-driven business to everything he does. Mike Thakur, welcome back.
Mr. Tim, good to be back, buddy.
I was checking. I couldn't remember how long it's been.
Oh, it's been a minute. It's got to be 3 or 4 years.
Do you remember what you were up to in 2021?
I was living in Houston, Texas, not in Tennessee.
Does it seem like a long time ago?
It seems like a very long time ago, Tim. Yeah. I think I just started podcasting. I think I started late 2020. So I was a newbie at this, You were the maestro.
No, man, I've only been doing it a couple of years. And in 2021, everybody was doing it.
Yeah. You're right.
In some ways, 2021 seems like yesterday. In some ways, it seems like decades ago.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yes, I'm on the decades track. I don't even know how much I remember of 2020 and 2021, other than it was tough.
Yeah, a bunch going on with business. But I did something right before I jumped on here. I went and watched a video clip of some crazy guy who bought a burned down mansion, violated just about every rule that people in real estate have and know about. But yet it looked like it was a load of fun. So let's just start off with that, and then we'll kind of veer around and see where we go. What the heck was going on with that?
It's a funny thing, right? So obviously I'm not from the US, as you can tell from my English accent, but we've lived here for 20-ish years, and it's all been in Houston, Texas, with the exception of 3 months when Linda and I, my wife, were kids at college. We spent the summer with a program called Teen Challenge in Nashville, Tennessee. And Teen Challenge, for those of you that don't know, is a substance rehabilitation program. It's a 1-year residential program. They have centers all over the US, incredibly high success rates. And we absolutely loved it. We had such a blast. They had this London double-decker bus. We used to go out to the projects and the red light districts and stuff and do evangelism. It was great. And they wanted us to come back when we graduated, and we wanted to come back. And we tried to get visas and everything, and it just didn't work out. We couldn't get them. And so, eventually a few years later, we came to Houston, and we've been there ever since. And so I started to make jokes and comments a few years ago to Linda. Do we really want to live in Houston for the rest of our lives? Like, we've never really tried anywhere else. The kids are getting older. If they start getting married, I'm thinking I'm never going to get you to move anywhere, because then grandbabies are going to be involved. And so it was kind of tongue-in-cheek comments. And then a friend of mine was having an event in Nashville, first time we'd been back since 1996, right? And this is 2022. And so we went back, and so we were there for a few days, and I said, well, hey babe, Nashville seems okay, I did not know it was the place everybody wants to live, all right? So I'm not one of those people. And so we went for a couple more trips, we prayed about it, kind of felt peaceful about it. And so finally we said, okay, we're going to book a trip with the kids. We're going to go check out the areas properly, maybe go look some houses. And so we were flying on Thursday, and on Wednesday morning, I get an email from Linda, and she says, hey, this house just came on the market. What do you think? And it's a picture of the house on fire, literally on fire, with the flames coming out of the roof. And I'm reading the description, and it says, burned down mansion, might be able to reuse the foundation. It's $1.5 million. So I forwarded it to my realtor. I said, hey, Sam, why don't you just add this to the list? It might be fun to go check it out. So we fly in Thursday morning. We go look at some houses. They're all terrible. And we sat in the Airbnb Thursday night, and my son, well, actually, no, I'm going to tell the story properly. So we look at some houses Thursday. One of the houses we look at is $2 million, right? There's literally holes in the wall. Like, people have punched holes in the wall and kicked in, like bedroom doors, kicked in off their frames and stuff. And I said to the realtor, I'm so confused right now. Like, is this really the level of houses? Are they that expensive here? Because I may not be leaving Texas if that's the case. And he said to me, oh, this is like one of those houses you see on Zillow gone wild. Like, this is not what it's really like, in South Nashville. And I said, what's Zillow gone wild? And he said, oh, it's this website where all the crazy houses go. You should go check it out. So we're in the Airbnb on Thursday night, and my son walks in the room with his phone and he says, Dad, isn't this the house we're going looking at tomorrow? And I look at it, and sure enough, this sucker's hit Zillow Gone Wild on Thursday afternoon. It's got some ridiculous amount of views in like 2 hours. I mean, hundreds of thousands of views. And I thought to myself, this is not what I need to happen right now. Like, I'm thinking we're going to go in there and buy this thing for $100,000. Now the whole world's looking at it. By the time I get my phone out and email the realtor and I say, Sam, we probably want to go look at this house first tomorrow and not at the end of the day, because it seems to be picking up steam online. Friday morning, we drive out there. It's 10:30 in the morning. We get there and the owner of the house is standing there. His wife's the agent. He's the guy selling it. Apparently someone else is going to come view it at the same time, which is even worse for me. Thankfully, they didn't show up. So we start walking around and looking at it, and he starts telling us this sucker's gone viral overnight. He's already turned 4 offers down. There's a guy flying in from out of state that day to come look at it. And I'm just thinking, this is not at all what I was hoping for. And so now the price is going up, and I'm thinking it should be going down. So it's going terribly wrong. So I stood down the driveway with the kids and I said, look, if we think we might want to move to Nashville, we don't really have any reason to be here. It'd be fun to have something to do while we settle in. Like, do we want to go for this or not? Because if we leave, this sucker's going to be gone. And I'm telling you, I've got it on camera. They all stood there and agreed that it would be a fun project to do. Much to their dismay, I went back and negotiated with the seller, and we came to an agreement, and we shook hands right there on the driveway, and we signed that contract like an hour later. And that's how we bought the burned down mansion. And 4 weeks later, we were living in Franklin, Tennessee.
So here's kind of where it connected with me. I saw somewhere the viral nature of the mansion on fire for sale.
Right.
Which is a pretty darn great tactic for getting people's attention.
Yeah.
It worked, right? I don't know if they got what they wanted or whatever, but they definitely generated buzz. And then something happened just a little while after that. And I see where this guy named Mike, and I'm going, wait, that's my buddy Mike. And I'm sitting here in my mind going, okay, let me tell you what ran through my mind, and you could shoot me down or whatever. I'm going, okay, this is a promotional thing. It's a promotional stunt. He's going to share what happens on YouTube, which you did, which was very entertaining and all that. Looking for an adventure. There's something else going on. This is my skepticism and cynicism. There's something else going on. You and I talked a couple times along the way, but was it totally flippant, or did you have a strategy?
No strategy. We just felt like it could go back together again, Humpty Dumpty style. So, yeah.
But you did record it and you shared it. And so there was a little bit of a, we'll say, promotion or whatever along the way. How did that work out? Was that just for fun? Was there any, sound like there wasn't strategy. I mean, come on, man, give me something, Mike.
Yeah. So here's what happened, right? We signed the contract on Friday night. It's already on the news. Like, it's on the Nashville news, because this sucker's under contract in 2 days. It only listed Tuesday night at 5 p.m. Next thing I know, I'm getting phone calls and emails from news crews, like all over the world, like literally all over the world. I spent 10 days, all day, every day, doing interviews with TV stations and media outlets and who knows what. I think it was like 53 interviews. Because it was getting so much interest, we'd kind of done a little bit of filming just for us, like, because we were looking around this house, we didn't want to forget how bad it was when we went home. And so we thought, well, if people are interested, we'll just vlog it and we'll stick it on YouTube and see if anybody wants to come along for the ride. And I had friends from England who I haven't spoken to for years, literally reaching out like, is this you buying this house? I mean, it was in the British newspapers, this Manchester lads buying a burned down house. So people kind of got excited about it. So yeah, so we vlogged it through the journey. And then, at the end, we did a longer video with like before and afters and that kind of stuff. And it did okay. I think we got, 1.5 million views or something like that. I mean, nothing crazy, but here's where it gets really funny, right? So I'm thinking, I'm going to be a YouTube star. We're going to get tons of views. I'm going to get a load of money off YouTube. It's going to help me pay for the house, which is not what happened. I made like $1,000. So a few months ago, this channel reaches out and says, hey, we saw the house video. Looks cool. Can we take the footage and, we'll recut our own version of it? And I'm like, is this a scam or is this real? So I go look at their channel. They got 17 million subscribers. So I'm thinking, okay, like, yeah, you can do that. They offered to pay me a couple of dollars, literally nothing, but it's fine. So these guys put together a video and they only took the footage we had on YouTube. So they got no extra footage at all. We didn't give them anything else. And their video is at 15 million views in like a month and mine's at 1. Apparently somebody enjoyed watching it, just not on my channel. So I think Quantum Tech, good for you. You did a great job and you all did awesome out of it. But little old Mikey needs to fine tune his YouTube editing skills.
Yeah. So end of the day, you still in the house? Did you sell it?
We're living there, dude. It's awesome. Yeah, absolutely love it. I'll happily sell it if somebody wants to buy it. I'm working on another project, but we are still living there for now.
Yeah. So still a good move. Here's the big question. Linda cool with it still?
She loves it. She is a happy camper. Yeah. We've still got the business in Houston. I'm in Houston right now. My 2 older kids are here with me working. She's like, yeah, I ain't going back to Houston. You can travel, but I'm staying right here. So she's there with my youngest. Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty part of the country up there. So having gotten all that behind you now, what's big in your life now, man? What's going on? What's like on Mike's radar?
So, it's really funny. We went there with no idea why, except for a nudge, what I call a nudge. That seems to be how, when we make big decisions, it seems like we get nudges. And that's just for me and Linda. And so we went there with nothing but a nudge, no idea what we were going to do, no idea why we were there. And, it was slow. I think I underestimated how hard it would be to move states. It was harder for us to move from Texas to Tennessee than it was to move from England to America, if that gives you some context. But now we've been there for 2.5 years. Now I'm starting to get a grasp of what's going on. So Franklin's an interesting place, and there seems to be an incredibly high concentration of really amazing people that love Jesus. And that's not to say that there aren't amazing people that love Jesus in other places, but I think because it's a bit of a smaller town, the concentration is a little higher. We've made such good friends this 2.5 years, probably more friends than I made in Houston in nearly 20. And I'm working on something we call Kingdom Impact Exchange, which is really a subcategory of the Hope economy. And it's all around this idea of motivating, supporting, and helping build up people who are building companies, entrepreneurs, business leaders, and helping develop them and grow them in a way where they recognize the company exists first for kingdom. And that sounds cute, and people say this, but not so many people actually put their money where their mouth is. I think the business is God's, and I get a paycheck. The business isn't mine, and God gets my leftovers. And that's not just about money. It's about everything. It's about understanding that the staff on my team, the partners, the vendors, the clients, everything in my sphere of business, I'm challenged to sit back and say, okay, God's got some good works for me to do. What if I could use all of this sphere to figure out what those good works might be? Because I think those good works are more than just write a check to someone else. I mean, I can do that too, but there's probably something I can use my skill set for, my capabilities for, maybe because I'm an entrepreneur and I've built a few things. Maybe I can do it a little bit better. Maybe I can do it more efficiently or more effectively. I think God is calling marketplace leaders, business owners, entrepreneurs to take all of them and give it all to Him and apply it all to Him in the marketplace. I think that's where the future move is coming. I don't think it's organized religion. We're out there in the world 7 days a week, just like Paul was, when he was building tents. And so my goal is to spur people on, encourage them to do that. And then from there, we'll create what we call impact pods within our community. So right now, these are in-person, real-life meetups. We started in Franklin a few weeks ago. We've already got 3 more cities that are signing up, and we're probably going to have more coming soon. But the real goal is, as we grow that community, is to be able to curate opportunities and say, okay, hey, who's got a heart for building schools in Africa? Because I've got one right here that needs to get built, and we need 4 or 5 smart people to come help figure out how to do that. Or maybe it's clean water or practical needs, tangible needs, Matthew 25, that kind of stuff. I think we can do this together. I think we can really build a beautiful community where it's mission first, and none of us need to worry about money because we're all being taken care of by the businesses that we run.
Yeah, I think something happens. I was thinking about it. I was reading Paul, the Apostle Paul, recently, and I was just thinking about the position that he was in, not taking money. He was pretty clear about that along the way. The only financial discussion that he had along the way was when he was raising money for a gift to take back to Jerusalem. Possibly, we don't know the exact motives, but we know that he was attempting to restore a breach maybe between 2 communities there. But he never received a dime, as best we can tell, for what he did that continues to permeate. And I actually think, Mike, that it can mess with people.
It does.
You've had this discussion before, and I don't, we have listeners that are full-time ministry people. And I don't mean to bash, but something happens when all of a sudden you're told to show up and do this, go to the hospital, take a microphone and say a few words, read a few scriptures, and we're going to pay you X amount of money to do that. Just saying it sounds odd. And so you know me, you and I are cut from the same cloth.
Yeah.
It's like business is kind of what we lead with, and ministry is foundational. But what are you seeing now? I'm sure we talked about this 4 years ago also, because it's the conversation that comes up a lot. But what are you seeing now in ministry post-COVID, post all that's gone on? We're deep into a term of Trump that spills over into a lot of things. And that's not a political statement. It's just a mood we're in here in the United States. What are you seeing?
I think a very strong moment in history was Charlie Kirk being shot. And I didn't realize Charlie Kirk was a Christian. I'd seen a couple of clips, I think, and they were political type things, guy at a college campus or whatever, and I just ignored him. And the more that I've learned about him since, and the more that I've watched, Mark Driscoll made a tweet a couple of weeks ago, and it said something to the effect of, the Holy Spirit moved out of the pulpit. And everybody got upset about it. I kind of think he's right. When you look at someone like that and what they were able to do for the kingdom, for Jesus, the way he was able to talk about his faith publicly outside the walls of a church, I think it's really been an eye-opener for a lot of Christians to sit back and say, well, hang on a second. I function outside the church. Like, I could be that bold. I can talk about my faith, wherever I am, whatever I'm doing. And I hope we don't lose that, because I think there's real momentum there that could grow. But I also think it's a very vivid kind of picture for us. What if God is moving out of the pulpit? I'm not saying that we shouldn't have a pulpit at all and, on the 4 walls of a church building, but the church isn't a building. The church isn't a business. The church isn't an organization. The church is a community of believers living out their faith walk together. That's the New Testament church. So we're going to be really clear when we talk about church, what are we talking about? If we can touch the world through business, through sustainable impact, through self-sustaining projects, and we're around people all the time, then it seems to me that the people we want to raise up are the business leaders. And I see a real hunger there. I see a real desire there. As I've talked to young entrepreneurs, and not so young entrepreneurs, but especially young entrepreneurs who are trying to figure this out, the voices that they are listening to are the same voices that everybody else is listening to. And I'm not knocking Alex Hormozy, I'm not knocking Andy Elliott or any of these other guys that have got, tons of content going out there. But I know enough about God to know he doesn't tend to stick to formulas, and he doesn't tend to move in everybody's life the same. So if all they're hearing is follow this funnel, follow this thing, sell to many from a stage, do this coaching program, make it $997 and $1997 and whatever else, and they're just following the same blueprint everybody else is following, it seems more likely than not that they're going to fail. And that means there's space for a different way to look at this. That means there's space for more voices to come around them. Some older folks, maybe, like me and you, and others, help them realize, no, actually, this is how we lean into God. This is how we press in. These are some basic fundamental business things, but each one of us has to find our own path and our own journey. For me, it included a burned down mansion. How is that a smart business decision? But it was an incredibly good decision in so many ways. And ultimately, it will be financially as well when we sell it, But I would never have seen that coming. And no guru, no coach, no professional would have said, Mike, here's the way you want to go forward and move states. Here's how you build a YouTube presence. Like, buy something crazy. I mean, maybe they would have, but nobody did. I think for me, what I'm seeing is a lot of hungry entrepreneurs that love Jesus, don't know what to do with that, don't know what it should look like, and the voices they're hearing aren't the best voices. That's the problem I'm trying to tackle, and I think other people are too.
Yeah, and the big challenge that I think many of us see is that oftentimes they think the only way that they can serve the Lord is to go into that full-time role. Over the course of your career, and I think your career was even originally a full-time ministry, and then at some point there's a break or a movement or nudge or whatever you want to call it that goes into business, and you go, you know what? I still love the Lord. I'm still talking to people about Jesus and other things, but I'm making a couple dollars. I'm putting food on the table, and I don't have the frustrations that sometimes go with, trying to pay mortgages while you're talking about Jesus and having a building and stuff like that. I think that's cool. And then there's the other direction some people go where they operate in business for so long, they get saved or their faith grows. And for some reason, they believe they have to leave that and go into full-time ministry. And here's the deal. Like, everybody's got their own journey. So I'm not going to sit here and say there's a right and a wrong.
Right.
But I think what you and I have a heart for, and this is what I'm hearing you say, is that find out what your path is and embrace it and get the resources, the tools, the community that can help you get there. And if it means going into some full-time role, you know what? Do it. Or build something big, or go buy a burned down house. Darn it. I can tell you, I would have tried to talk you out of that. I would have.
I hear your heart, Tim, and I totally get it, but I disagree a little bit. Where I have a hard time, I see the modern day entrepreneur like an Old Testament king, right? The king is how the country was blessed. The king had the resources, the king had the people, the king had the finances, the king had the ideas, and was supported by a priest and a prophet. And I know the New Testament is different now because it's priesthood of all believers. We can talk to God directly. He can talk to us directly, but we also have these other roles as well. And I'm okay with that. But I think my nuance, for you would be, I cannot fathom any reason why somebody who is successful as a business person or an entrepreneur would leave that and stop that to go and work full-time in a ministry role in organized religion in the four walls of a church. I see only downside for Jesus. Unnecessary financial pressure to the kingdom. Why would we take money out of the kingdom when we can be generating our own and putting money in? That means more to help people, right? Those, Matthew 25, it haunts me. I don't understand how you have verses that say, if I believe in my heart and I confess in my mouth that Jesus Christ is Lord, I will be saved. And then you've got Jesus saying, yeah, but you didn't come and visit me in prison, and you didn't give me something to drink, and you didn't give me something to eat. You're not coming in. I didn't think we were saved by works, but apparently there is an expectation that we do something practical with our faith when we are saved. Anything that we do that creates an extraction event of kingdom resources instead of an input of kingdom resources makes no sense to me at all. You can change the world as a business guy. You can create really good jobs. You can pour into your staff. You can lead them in a godly way. Your example can save them. Not to mention how you do business with your clients and everything else. Why would you leave that to go and be a professional? I don't even know that there were that many professionals in the New Testament. Like, I just don't know. And I realize it's a little bit risky to talk like this.
Well, the unfortunate thing, Mike, is I wonder as I drive around and I see all these buildings that are up, and I wonder why they're there. The thing that I wrestle with, and I'll mention this, and you and I can have a little chat about this. I want to believe that there is some good going on in what we call that traditional church setting. I want to believe that there's somebody there, that they're getting what they need, and they're also digging personally in the word. They're not just sitting there taking whatever's coming from the pulpit, and that's their faith journey. Though I don't see a lot of examples that give me comfort there, but I can't just, and I'm getting closer and closer. I mean, I will tell people often that my wife and I and others, we would have what we call an ecclesia gathering. I believe this is one right here. I believe you and I, there'll be things that you'll say that later I'll think about, and it'll cause me to study something, and maybe I'll say something that'll do the same for you, and we'll, this is iron sharpening iron in many ways. We're letting people listen in on it. And I just have to believe that that is a big piece of the kingdom of God that's continuing to expand and grow. And that there is a king. Neither one of us are claiming to be the king, but we are servants in that kingdom. And right now, that kingdom for you is Houston and Nashville, and the location for me happens to be mostly Atlanta. And also there's an RV parked in southern Arizona that I hope to get to as the weather gets cooler. It's not geographic specific. You've learned that. There's different places you can go. I don't think it's job specific, role specific, individual specific. I am open to really seeing some cool stuff go on. And I'm with you. I believe that some cool stuff can come out of what we call business people, but that's what the disciples looked like. They were a kingdom impact exchange, weren't they? I mean, that's what we see here. So if somebody's listening in, Mike, and someone might be getting agitated with this conversation, what would you say to them? What would you say to them if we're like, hold on a second, man, did they just say they're not excited about church, but that's the church?
I think I would say, remember, there's a big C church and a small C church. There's organized religion, the business of church, the organizations. And I think what we have made in the West, we have made church like a business, right? We run it with a C-suite and all the way down. It functions like a business and an organization. I don't believe that's the model of the New Testament at all. That's not to say God can't work through those things, because he's smart enough to work through everything. But just because God moves doesn't mean he approves. And that goes for all of us. I can be praying with somebody and I can feel like God's given me a word for them. That doesn't mean he's happy with everything in Mike's life. It doesn't mean I'm suddenly a superstar Christian. It just means he's gracious enough to somehow cover all that and still be able to move in that moment through me. And so I think I'd keep that perspective. My heart is saying there's even more for us to live as believers. There's a better way for us to do this life. There's a better way for us to live in community, and it involves more proximity. It involves more time commitment. It involves more living with other people. That's why we're doing kids communities in real life. That's why other people are doing house church and trying different models to see if they can do it better. I'm working on a different project that's top secret, no one knows, but I'm trying to figure out how to literally live life 7 days a week with a group of other people centered around Jesus. And it's very rough around the edges. It's a huge deal. It's going to take a whole lot of money to build. But if we can figure out how to execute and do it, it's going to be utopia for me.
Well, they did it in the first century. And most of the letters, the epistles and all, went to groups that were doing that. The positive of it is that they were living together. They were sharing things. They were nurturing each other, helping each other. The challenge is that first century, They were renegades. They were saying that Jesus is Lord, not Caesar is Lord, which means that they were risking quite a bit. And then they were also leaving the synagogue, which they were risking things there. So they had two groups that were attacking them. That's why we need to read the New Testament in context and understand that that was going on. So I do wonder, and maybe you've thought through this, how you can create that tension to make it to where you almost, now, you know what, we may be getting closer to this than we think. Maybe that mansion you've redone could be the spot where a bunch of people have to come, maybe Mad Maxing it or something like that. I don't know.
Maybe the next one. It's going to be a little bit better for
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So that's not it.
I'm working on it.
Yeah. So, I mean, because I've put some thought into it too. I've actually looked at your business model of, like Work Lodge and co-working. And I told you this before, startup communities and even coffee shops. They've kind of got that hangout vibe, nurture, love on each other, do your own thing, but be around people. There may be some other things, but I mean, I see that as being more church than some of the church that we know, right?
Yeah. I mean, a coffee shop is essentially a community hub, right? Like typically you go there to meet friends, to meet other people, have a business meeting. I mean, it's more community 7 days a week than most places out there right now.
And there's coffee.
Yeah. And hot chocolate if you don't drink coffee.
So when somebody bumps into you and they ask you what you do right now, what do you tell them?
I wrestle with this a lot. I used to joke that, I was trying to be unemployed, and then my wife said I probably shouldn't say that. So now I say I talk and I write about kingdom business. That's where my focus is. That's where my heart is. I'm dumb enough to think if we can get a few entrepreneurs that love Jesus, love business, to think about impact and be willing to invest their time and their energy and a little bit of capital, I think we can still go out and change the world. I don't think it'll take that many people.
Yeah. And entrepreneurs are people that get things done. Really, church planters, early first century disciples, they were entrepreneurs. One tough thing about entrepreneurs is that many times they are loners. Many times they are, if it is to be, it's up to me. I'm going to do it on my own. How are you coordinating that? What's your plan there? What are you thinking?
So my experience from conversations is that I have yet to meet an entrepreneur that wants to be alone. They are alone a lot of the time, but none of them want to be alone. They can't find their tribe. They can't find other people. And that's what I'm trying to give them and build.
And so then the thing that holds them together is the mission. Is that correct?
Yeah. It's proximity, it's community, it's life. I mean, obviously there's some structure to these things, but we're not trying to be a structured anything. I'm trying to bring people together to make more friends, to do life together, centered around the two tenets of business and faith. And then, yes, the mission is the driver, because now we're going and getting up to mischief together. And now we're going to go tell some fun stories about how we managed to pull this crazy idea off in Guatemala in 6 months or whatever it is. Like to me, that's the journey. That's the fun of Christianity.
So how do you do this? I'm thinking about all the potential challenges that one can have with this. One challenge that occurs within a lot of organization, and we can go back to church, is that there is a dynamic person, usually a male. I've always wondered how females would act in these situations, but it's usually a male, and they start building something. And males aren't typically ones that just like to maintain, they like to scale. And when things start scaling, especially if there's some charisma there and all that, it begins becoming about them, whether they want it to or not. There could be a Mike or a Tim that, can speak well, hold a microphone, share some things, get on YouTube, whatever. And then all of a sudden it becomes about them. And we also have seen, you mentioned Mark Driscoll earlier, we've seen what can happen when all of a sudden a leader can consume all that. How does Tim, how does Mike, how does other leaders that are listening in, I don't want to say prevent that. I don't think that's what we do, but how do we stay grounded? How do we not let it get to our heads? How do we not make it about us? And I'm okay with a little bit of spotlight. That's not the big deal, but I know that can be quite the drug also. So
Fascinating question, Tim.
yeah,
No. There's so many layers to this. So on a simplified level, raising community up and not superstars helps limit that. Let's take an impact pod. It's never going to be one person. It's going to be 4 or 5. So you can go brag that you built a children's home out in Africa, but you didn't. There was 5 of you that did. So I think there's some safety there, just at a very simplistic. As far as the challenge for me, right, or the leader or whoever it is. You know, I used to work with very successful people, right? I was chief operating officer at the security company for billionaires. Most of our clients were billionaires. Occasionally we would have somebody who might be worth 100-ish or more million. Usually folks below that level didn't need the kind of help that we had and really couldn't afford the services that we offered. I mean that respectfully. What was interesting, because we all know the story, right? Money's a magnifier. The clients in the hundreds of millions were the ones that wanted spotlight. The clients that were worth billions couldn't care less. I tell that anecdote to say one of the reasons I think entrepreneurs and successful entrepreneurs are the best people to go and do things for kingdom. And again, I'm going to ruffle a few feathers here. If I'm already successful and I don't need anything, I don't really care. Like, I can retire today and never do a thing for the rest of my life and I'll be okay. I'll probably be more than okay, actually. I was kind of wanting to do it and it's taken me a year plus to get Kicks off the ground because I really didn't want to do it. I don't need drama. I don't want drama. I don't want to be busy. I kind of want to just stay home and hang out with Linda. And that sounds terrible, but it's where I am, humanly speaking. So for me, as I try and self-analyze, not saying I'm perfect, I'm not going to say I'm never going to get this wrong. I don't really want the spotlight. I don't want to be in the spotlight. I'm trying to raise everybody else up so they go do some cool stuff. And then I'll go home at night and I'll just feel good about myself for helping them go do it. And then I didn't have to travel because I hate traveling. The really successful folks don't need anything else because they've already achieved and won. And I think that's the problem we've got, where in organized religion, you've got people, and again, hear my heart on this, they aren't really that successful. They're trying to build their brand, they're trying to build their name, they're trying to build everything else because they haven't built all that for themselves. So they're doing it in the wrapper of Jesus. And that's where the temptation comes. And when everything's coming at you and it's being handed to you, it's a very different place to be. And I think the reality is, maybe there aren't that many people that can handle that elevation. And that's why we get everybody falling over and failing and screwing up and doing everything else that they're doing, because they set themselves up on a pedestal to lead something like they're Jesus on earth now, right? I'm the top of the food chain and everything. It's like, that's not how it works. Even in the New Testament, it was team leadership. It was pastor elder is the same Greek word. It was a plurality. The pastor wasn't the pastor. The New Testament church was led by a plurality of elders. It was multiple people. Maybe there was a first among equals, but there were multiples. Let's just go build stuff together. And then we don't have a superstar. And somebody might say, well, Kicks is your thing and, you know, you're the founder or whatever. And it's like, yeah, okay, great. But it's not really my thing. It's their thing, because it's all about them. It's all about that community. I genuinely want to make friends. I have a friend of mine who's a strategist. We spent literally like 8 months building out this whole thing, the way that the world would build it out, programs and cohorts and this and that. And here's how we're going to monetize. And here's how we're going to do this. And I got to the end of it and I said, you know, this looks really good on paper. This just isn't what I want to do. Like, I don't know what I want to do, but it's not that. And so I stopped and I burned 3 or 4 months and I couldn't shake the fact that I felt like God wanted me to do something. And so I sat down and I said, okay, I'm just going to go sit at a coffee shop, let a few folks know that I'm going to be there and we're just going to go hang out. I'm gonna not talk about money for as long as humanly possible. I'm not gonna care about monetizing anything. I get that I'm gonna have to pay for a few things. I can handle that for right now. If it gets out of hand, we'll figure something out. I can tell you this, and I don't know if this is gonna work or not, right? So you can come back at me in a few years if it did, and you can remind me of this, but anybody that gets involved with Kicks and helping me, any future facilitators, leaders, whatever you want to call them, anybody on the team, if they're focused on how they're going to get something out of this, they won't be around on the team for long, because this isn't about what I can get out of it. So somebody joked to me when I was talking about this and asked the question, but Mike, like, how are you going to get paid? What's in it for you? And I said, dude, I already got paid. Jesus has blessed me so incredibly through life. I don't need him to give me more through doing something for kingdom and mission. If anything comes in at all, it goes back into mission and kingdom. Like, I don't want to touch it. I don't want anything. I don't want to go near it on a monetary level. I think that goes the same for praise and recognition and everything else. I've wrestled with this a lot, and that's just not what we're trying to build. And I don't think anybody should be trying to build it. And I think that's why we have so many problems in the kingdom and in church particularly, because they are trying to build their own isolated worlds. Like you said, how many buildings do we need? We all can't share. We all can't figure out how to build maybe one big one instead of 5 small ones that are all next door to each other on the same street. That just makes no sense at all. Like, if I was God writing the checks, I would never do it that way. No business person would do it that way. But there's no strategy, because there's no cohesiveness, because there's no unity, because we're all off doing our own things. And so I'm just trying to figure out if I can pull off something different.
I'm always, this is the way I say it when we used to visit. As we traveled all over the world, we went to Australia, New Zealand, all over the place. I would always walk in churches and I would pretty quickly be able to know if they were building their kingdom or they were contributing to the kingdom. It's just another way of saying what you just said there. And usually it had something to do with somebody who was standing up on stage in the pulpit. And you could, after a while, you could start to smell if they're the deal or something else is the deal. And, I'll use some words that I heard that you may not have exactly used, but, you're striving for something, you're working, you're chasing after something versus just letting things come to you, abiding, words that we know. And so one thing I'm curious about, because I've asked myself this question often, I'm now in my 60s, and I wonder, because my mindset is similar. I mean, I'm working on projects now, and I don't want to say I don't care. That I don't like saying that, but I actually sort of don't. I do care about the results, but what I care more about is my actions that I can take on a daily basis and what's nourishing my soul and what might be nourishing someone else's. That's how I measure. But my question is some of this mindset, is it a byproduct of age? Both of us are not 20-something anymore. We just hired a 20-something-year-old, and earlier today he was in my office telling me, we've got to think big. We've got to go big. We've got to scale. We've got to go big. And I'm kind of just looking at him going, maybe. I said, but there's always a bigger picture. Maybe and we're on a pretty fast growth path with our company. But how much is it a byproduct of maybe age, maturity? We could throw that word in. And maybe one other thing that some people sometimes are uncomfortable talking about, and that is the balance in your checking account. You mentioned that you've been blessed and that you could retire, and someone might be listening in going, yeah, Mike, you can. I'm sitting here with 2 kids and I'm trying to squeeze nickels and I can't think that way. I could argue with that, but I'm going to let you address that, because I do think that's something that goes through people's minds. Like, yeah, Mike can just be at rest and peace and have fun with stuff. But okay, so age, maturity, and bank balance. Talk to me about those and how they impact your mindset.
Yeah, no, I think you're nailing it. I think you're exactly right. Age is definitely some of it. When we're 20, we think we can do it everything. We get to 50 and 60 and realize it really isn't really about me anymore. Never was. We just thought it was when we were younger. Bank balance, yeah, it makes a difference. I'm not going to say it doesn't, but I was on food stamps 15 years ago. So what do you want me to say? You know, some people are 5 talent people. Some people are 2 talent people. Some people are 1 talent people. I get that. But if you're living paycheck to paycheck, God's not speaking to you to go build a school in Africa. Like, you're at a different phase in life. You're at a different stage in whatever's going on, and your walk with God's going to be different. And I don't know where that's going to go. I don't know if it's ever going to go past that. Maybe you'll always have a job and that's what you're doing. And if so, that's okay. Like, if that's the plan that God had for you, you can do so much for the kingdom right where you're at. This isn't about this role being better than this role or anything else. There are a ton of people far more successful than me, far further ahead, far smarter, far wiser, probably better place to go and start something like Kicks. If I'm honest, I don't know why they haven't. I'm just trying to figure out my little place where I am. I think all those things apply whichever level you find yourself at. And our job as believers is to figure out how to just make the most of where we are, understand where God's taking us, pay attention to what he's saying to us, and lean into it. I think I'm a 1 talent guy, like, genuinely. I couldn't build Microsoft. I couldn't build Apple. Like, I wouldn't know what to do with 100,000 employees and that kind of revenue. I don't know that I could learn enough to know what to do with that. I'm okay with that. I wish I wasn't. I wish I was a little bit smarter, but I've learned to live with it and just figure out what I can do and keep moving forward. But I mean, what do you think, Tim? Like, do you think there's something else beyond those, or?
You brought something up that we'll bring up, and there's a couple things we'll talk about before we jump off. You mentioned 12 years ago you were on food stamps, I think is what I heard you say. 13 years ago, I was homeless and bankrupt. I can't remember if I've asked you the story about being on food stamps. What it basically says is, I think I like the Tyson quote, says, you find out what someone's made of when they're punched in the nose when they get started. I do wonder at times, and I'm not making a doctrine out of this, I do wonder at times if we have to be humbled. Whatever that means. It might mean different things for different people. It could be that some people could have 7 figures in their bank account instead of 8, and they're humbled.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
For me, it was loading up a few things in a Honda van with 300,000 miles, and my wife of 20-something years, and telling our kids there's no home to come to, and hitting the road. 12 years later, we've got more money in the bank, more financial resources and things. I mean, it's kind of, but I don't care. I don't know how to describe that. And that doesn't sound super spiritual. You sound biblical, but that's not what's important. And that's what you're saying, right?
Yeah. But I'm also saying, as men and leaders in the home, we have a responsibility to climb as far as we can and as high as we can and do the best that we can to take care of our families. And you did it. I'm trying to figure out how to do it. And that's a biblical mandate and responsibility. It does not just fall out of the sky and get handed to you.
Yeah. It's not something where you just sit around and wait. I think I shared this with you before, in Bible school, business was cranking. We were starting to get our feet going again. This was about 10 years ago. And there were so many people, Christians. I love them. I'm a Christian myself. I could be critical of them, but I am a Christian, even though sometimes I may. And they would just sit around. They were waiting. They were waiting for the Lord. Waiting.
Yeah.
Waiting to hear from the Lord. I am waiting for the Lord. So the thing that I think it'd be great to leave people with, Mike, is how should kingdom-minded business entrepreneurs, people that believe they've got a leadership or business bent and some skills, how should they look at success? How should they define it? Because, we've sort of said it's not just about money, but money's involved. It's not necessarily about different things. So let's finish up. Define success for us.
So before I do that, I just want to go back to what you were saying there about people that wait. I just want to add a thought here, because it is a very Christian problem. And it's actually a very charismatic Christian problem, because we believe that God is a miraculous God. And so if he does miracles, then he's going to come do a miracle for me, right? Maybe the framework for this is this simple. You can wait for God to do what only he can do. And other than that, you go do everything else. So in other words, if there's something you can do, go get a second job, go get a third job. I've had 3. It's okay. But if I need God to raise somebody from the dead, that was on him. I'm okay waiting on that one because there's nothing that Mike can do to fix that, you know? And I wrestled with it. I grew up with that mindset. God's going to come save the day. God's going to come fix it. And even now I wrestle with it, 10 years in this business. And like, we got all kinds of people helping us with social ads and, Instagram this, and then a different guy for ads on something else and someone else on SEO. You're paying all these professionals to try and do these things well, because if I do everything I can think of, I'm okay waiting on God for the rest, if that makes sense. But your final question was, how would I define success for an entrepreneur? I think that's what you were asking.
Someone of faith that's an entrepreneur, they could be wrestling with that. But anyway, I'm sorry. I just throw that in the mix just to make it more complicated.
I think there's varying degrees of success, right? Success is having a wife that I'm still in love with after 31 years, having kids that I just enjoy spending time with and that work with me. For me, that was success. We wanted the kids to work with us and be close to us. And now I get to pour into them in a different way. I think success is feeling as though somehow I'm a better friend to God today than I was yesterday. I still don't know how to pray, if I'm honest. I still wrestle with my daily walk and that kind of stuff. But I hope that I'm doing a little bit better now than I was a year ago. So I kind of measure some success there. As far as business success, I really couldn't care about money. I never could. I really couldn't. We did great when we were younger, and we left it all so we could go serve at a church and get paid 26 grand a year with 3 kids. Hence the food stamps. That's why you don't walk away from marketplace and you think you're going to go in full-time ministry and screw your life away by making a decision like that. But that's a whole different story. I think success is lifting up more people around me today than I did yesterday, and aiming to lift up more people around me tomorrow, whatever that looks like. I think success looks like finding ways to help people who cannot help themselves, because we all got somewhere by somebody helping us. And it's not okay for people to need water and food and shelter and practical needs if we can fix it. And I'll tell you a story. I've had a heart for impact for years. We built this co-working business and started a 501c3 before we ever opened the doors that we fund from this business, right? So like I've been living this for well over a decade. When I read the story in Matthew 25 and he says, hey, I needed a drink and you didn't give me a drink. In my mind, I think, well, I can give someone a water bottle. That's easy. We've built water wells for thousands of people. And I thought I was doing okay. And then I met a guy one day. Well, actually, I heard a guy on stage. I didn't meet him. And he said, yeah, we wanted to tackle this water issue, in this village, out in Africa. So we built a water treatment facility and installed plumbing and piping, and we plumbed the entire village to get water to them. And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, I thought I was doing all right with a well. You come in with a whole water treatment facility. Like, I got to think bigger. That's success.
Yeah, think bigger. That's the message my 20-something-year-old guy told me. But you got to think bigger. Got to think bigger. So, hey, Mike, what do we need to do to help or for people to connect with the Kingdom Impact Exchange? Tell them if there's, I don't know if it's something that you're, scaling, if it's something that's is what it is, but tell people how they could find out more and if there is anything that people can do to either participate or keep it on their radar or something like that.
Yeah, no, just head over to letsgokix.com, K-I-X. And I think today it's a form, but hopefully this week there'll be a website there. We've got in-person meetups in Franklin, Tennessee. We've got 3 new cities that are going to come online here in the next few weeks. We're going to announce those. If you'd like to host one in your city, you can let us know and, we'll work out how to make that happen. If you're in a city and you think one should be there, but you don't want to be facilitating one, you can let us know that too. We'll get enough folks wanting one in the city, we'll try and figure out making that happen. And then we're going to try and do something online as well, just to help folks until we can be in real life. But we really value in-person relationship. That's what we're building. So we're fighting really hard to get that through what we call anti-scale. It would be easy for us to scale online and get everybody in, and do this grand whatever and make Mike the superstar, but that's not what we want to do. We're trying to figure out how to just multiply in the right way and get it out. So we'll just try and help as much as we can, and we'll try and connect you with the right support if you need it. If you're an entrepreneur that loves Jesus, I just want to be friends, right? If nothing else, we can be friends.
Yeah, that's cool. So make sure you check that out. Mike Thakur. Also, you got the podcast, Mike Drop. Still have a book out there, I guess. So very cool. I mean, you're not out pushing books and all either. I mean, it's out there, right? And people can get it.
Dude, I'll give it away for free. If you want it on ebook, just shoot me an email and I'll send it to you.
I'm the
Come
same
kill
way,
us.
man. You want it. I appreciate you. Always good to talk to you. And I look forward to at some point, you and I connecting face to face and hanging out.
Right?
And I'm down here in Atlanta. Maybe I can get to Nashville or Franklin or something like that. Or sometime when we're out on the road or something. Mike Thakur, y'all check him out. This is Seek, Go, Create. We've got new episodes every Monday. We're on YouTube, growing over on YouTube. A lot going on over there. Not viral like if a house burns down or something, but we've got a lot of cool stuff going on. So anyway, thanks for joining us, and we'll see everybody next week on Seek, Go, Create.